and today I'm back from my hiatus, minus those two videos in the middle that we don't talk about, and I'm here to do some serious content, alright? The past, what am I? The past 7 years, it's all been a joke. Now, it's time for some serious content. What we're gonna start off with today, this video, how to play Pokemon and how to Nuzlocke. Crazy thing, crazy concept. So, I don't think I posted it on my channel. I did a few live streams of it. But a Nuzlocke, well, I guess I'll explain it later. But a Nuzlocke is basically just a challenge mode for Pokemon. And I wanted to explain how to do that. But then I realized that a lot of you, I should say all of you, don't actually know how to play the game. So I'm going to be doing that. This video is going to have two parts, which hopefully I break up with those little video divider things in the bottom in like editing. We're going to have the first part, which is how to battle in Pokemon just in general. And then the second part, which is specifically how to Nuzlocke, which honestly looks very confusing. But we'll see how it goes. So, I'm here in Showdown because the way I'm going to explain battling is just by building a team and just showing different parts of it. So, the first thing we have to talk about is Pokemon base stats. Now, if you look here, hold on, I can zoom in. We have these 6 stats: HP, or health points, attack, defense, special attack, special defense, speed. And then BST means base stat total. All of these stats are the core part of what differentiates each Pokemon. They all do a different thing. So, HP is clearly, or obviously, the amount of health points a Pokemon has. Attack is the amount of damage. Well, I mean, it's the base amount of damage you can do to a Pokemon with one type of attack. Special attack is the same, but with a different type of attack. I'll get into that. Defense is obviously your defense against physical attacks, special defense against special attacks, and speed. Whoever has the highest speed in battle determines who goes first. Well, among a few other factors. But again, we'll get into that later. So, these stats are very important. We can look down here. I forgot that Showdown had this. Like, we can see there are some strong looking Pokemon up here. If we go all the way down, those Pokemon look strong. Power creep? These Pokemon look a little less weak, or a little less strong. As you can see, the numbers are different. And you can see a general trend, 370, 420, 340. And then if we go back up here, you can see 630, 430, almost 500. The stats go up significantly. So it can be seen that within a certain trend, stats equal viability. So that's very important. Now, the way you have to pick stats is a little strange, because unlike in a few other games I've played, the goal is not necessarily to get balanced stats. Like I said, the higher your stats are, the better, but you're more likely to specialize in a stat than just have it across the board. So, what's an example? Like here, you can see that, so the special attack is the highest stat, and the rest of them are a little less. For this one, the HP and the special defense are higher, and the rest are a little less. This Pokemon, this is a Mega, so it has high base stat total anyways. As you can see, it's not split completely evenly across the board. Part of building a team is realizing that, or just choosing your Pokemon, is realizing how you have to get your stats in. Actually, I guess we can use this as an example. So something I will say right now is, I'll get more into this later, that as you can see, we have some moves that have this little hit icon, and then and then these circle moves, and then other moves that have these multiple circle icons. Basically, like I was explaining before with the physical attack and special attack, these moves are physical and these are special. And now, this Pokemon has the same attack stat, so you obviously can use both. But something else to consider is that you can do certain things to raise your stats. So if we look here, there's this column called EVs. Now, you have 508. The max you can put into a stat is 252. So you can boost your stats. Well, for each 4 you get 1, so you're not getting 252 extra points, but you're getting a few extra. And you can choose, even in the actual game, when you don't have these numbers available to you, you can influence how you get these stats by killing wild Pokemon. Certain Pokemon give different EVs, they're called effort values, dependent on who they are. Like, I won't say it here, but you can consider a bird. Birds tend to be fast. A lot of bird Pokemon give speed EVs, more of these. If you have, I don't know, what's a Pokemon most people know? Like a Pikachu, that's a mouse. That's not really helpful. It's an attacker, a special attacker. It shoots electric attacks. So I think that it gives you special attack EVs, so you can influence how those happen. But you have to consider, you don't want to put these into attack. You might want to spread them out into a bunch of different stats. Like this. This is a really bad stat spread. Stat spread, yeah. But, you get the idea. You want to split it up. So if you have 252 into physical attack, then you might want to consider not using a special move, because then it would do less damage. Or you would have to split up your stats to account for it, but it just means you have less to work with. So that is something to consider as you build your Pokemon. I will say, in Nuzlocke, you're not, or just in your playthrough of the game, you're not always going to be worrying about it. Like, you don't have to worry about it if you don't want to. It doesn't make a massive difference, but it can make a difference if you want it to. So keeping track of that could be useful. Another thing, which is something, to my knowledge, you can't influence, it would be these things called IVs, or individual values. So obviously, this is a competitive Pokemon simulator. You want to have the max stats that you can, but in a real game, you don't get to pick that. You just have to have whatever you have, and your stats can look something like this. It's any number between 0 and 31 could be in your stats, and those influence how many points in your stat you have. Now, both EVs and IVs, they don't take effect immediately. They take effect as you level up. So, even if your Pokemon has 31 in an IV, when it's level 1, its stat is only going to be 6. But as you level up, you're going to get more and more of these IVs and EVs into your actual stat. So that's a lot of the reason why it doesn't matter that much, because it won't have its full effect. But anyways, these IVs you cannot influence. They're just what they are, and unless you're doing calculations, and you put it into an outside program, you're never going to know exactly what your IVs are. So if you want to do calculations, you kind of just have to guess on it. So yeah, that's something to consider. And then one last thing with stats, you can see in the stat screen, is your nature. There's 20, 25, that seems wrong. 36, I think, natures. that boost one stat by 10% at level one, at the max level, level 100, and then lower another by 10%. Now, this has an effect on your run, and you can sort of influence it, and there are a few ways to do that. In later games, there are mints, I believe, that are specific to each one, that you can choose what nature they have. But in earlier games, that isn't a thing, and I think, to my knowledge, the only way you can influence that is with a synchronized Pokemon. Now, we'll get into abilities later, but a synchronized Pokemon is it's a Pokemon with the ability synchronize. If you run into a wild Pokemon and the one at the front and your Pokemon at the front of your party is synchronized, there's a 50% chance that the wild Pokemon will have the same nature as yours. So that's one way you can influence it. So yeah, when you're using Pokemon in your game, you have to look at all of these things and see how it affects their battling ability. Now, typing. This is something I glossed over. You can see it says Rock Fairy right here. Typings are something that are part of the Pokemon and also moves, which again I'll get into. You can see this move is Fairy type. And these types are effective against some, not effective against others type thing. So you can imagine a water type. Let's get a water type in here. For no particular reason, we have a water type, and you can imagine that water puts out fire. So if Mudkip uses a water type move, for example, Water Gun, against this fire type, it's going to do double damage than it would have if it didn't have the fire type. And actually, there's a third thing, which is immunities. You can imagine electric type onto a ground type. Ground types are immune to electric types. There's a few types that have immunities, and types are probably, next to stats, are probably the most important part of a Pokemon, because some types are very good and some types are very bad. I won't go over all of them, but for an example, as you can imagine, fire is a very good offensive type. It hits a lot of things for super effective damage. It isn't resisted by many, but it's weak to a lot of things. But you can imagine, what's a steel type? Ferrothorn, actually, that's a very good example. It's a steel type. It resists a lot of things. And with this grass steel type, actually, there's a better example. Scissor, a bug steel type. Its only weakness is fire type because of the combination of resistances between it. Well, that's actually 2 times fire damage because both of these types are weak to fire, but still, it's only one weakness. So you can imagine how different types play into how viable a Pokemon is. And something else to consider is that not all moves are created equally. So if we look at the rock type, or rock type moves, should I say, physical. Nope, I can't type. Physical. What's a rock type? Like and rock. Rock. Yes, just give me. This is so annoying. If you look, with the exception of this move, which is very low power, all of these moves, again, I'll get into it later, the cyclical nature of Pokemon means I can't explain it all at once. All of these moves, these are the only viable moves for a physical rock type to use. None of them are 100% accurate. So, as you can see, you can run into problems where some types are better at attacking than others. And as you can see, most of these, the more power, the less accuracy type thing. But you can see with a move like Earthquake, you do not learn Earthquake. Do you learn Earthquake? I need an... what's Pokemon that learns Earthquake? You, as you can see, with the ground type, you've got an 100% power, 100% accuracy move. So some types are going to be much better at attacking than others. And that's just something that you have to consider. Well, okay. Maybe, yeah, we can go into attacks. So there are 3 types of attacks. There's physical moves. This is what I alluded to before. There are physical moves. There are special moves, and there are status moves. Now, Earthquake and Draco Meteor, the 2 attacking moves, the point of them is to attack. And even though they may have secondary effects, their point is to attack. Status moves can have a wider range of effects. They can inflict non-direct damage, like status conditions, which I'll get into, but they drain health or do other things over time. We also have other moves, like this one, that boost you, raises your user's attack by 2. I guess I didn't explain that. In battle, you can change your stats with things like this move. You can go up to 6 stages, but it's not linear. Well, it kind of is. Like, 1 stage up is 1.5 of that stat, and the same goes for downwards. But 6 stages up is only 4 times. So you can imagine another 0.5 step up each time. So, yeah. The thing about these moves, however, is all of them can be explained in one sentence. Boost attack by 2. Lowers, it does damage, but it lowers special attack by 2. All of these moves can be explained in one sentence, but there are so many of them that you need to know about to play the game. That is why I like this game so much, because there's just so much beauty in having to know so many simple things. Maybe that's weird, but for me, that's just what I love. Now, that's actually, about the moves. Now, how do you get the moves? I probably should have had this before. As your Pokemon grows, you get more and more access to moves. So, this is just one Pokemon, for no reason in particular. You can see, this was a bad example, but because it evolves beforehand. But if you can just imagine, as you go on, you get more and more moves to choose from. And as well as that, as you progress through your games, you get these things called TMs, and in earlier games, you get HMs. In later games, you get TRs. It's basically portable moves. Like if you have the TM for Ice Punch, then you can teach that to Swampert at any time. And it just, as you go on, you get more and more access to them, and you increase your ability to give variety to your Pokemon's moves. And that is that is one facet of how you make it stronger. And how you pick your moves, it's also interesting, because as you can see here, you only have 4 move slots. That holds true in the actual games as well, so you have to choose your moves wisely. For example, on the Scarchomp, it's more of a physical attacker, so maybe not Draco Meteor for this basic set. Sword Stance, to boost. Coverage is important. Again, with types, you want to be able to cover the types you're weak to. You want a rock move, but then also to hit flying. Well, I guess if you don't know the type chart, then this won't make sense. But all of these moves would be resisted. Okay, so, something else I didn't explain in typing. When your Pokemon uses a move of the same type, so this is a ground type, using a ground type move, its damage is 1.5 times what it would normally be. So that's something to consider when you're building your moves. So if you had a steel flying type, if you can imagine that, two examples, or well, if only two examples, or two steel birds. If you can imagine ground, can't hit something flying. Dragon, honestly, I don't have a good explanation for why steel resists dragon, but it does. And then stone edge would be neutral. Both of the steel flying types that exist are very defensive, so you might want a move that's super effective, like a fire move, like Fire Fang, because it's physical, but then you have to get rid of your boosting move. And that's just something to consider as you go on. And then something else to consider, which I also talked about before, but I'll bring up again, if you have a Pokemon like Empoleon, as you can see, its attack, or its special attack, is much higher than its physical attack. But one of the moves it learns is Drill Peck, and that's good coverage, but it's a physical move, so you have to consider that it's going to be weaker on this Pokemon. So it's just something to think about as you go on. Now, a little off topic, I've been talking about parts of the Pokemon, but something I do need to bring up is status conditions. So, what's a good Pokemon to do this with? Like, what is a good Pokemon to do this with? There aren't many Pokemon that are very helpful for my example. Okay, well, let's just go like Charizard, a big, strong guy. So, a flamethrower, you can see in the move's description, it has a 10% chance to burn the target. Now, burn is what's called a status condition. It's something that can be on your Pokemon in battle. And like I explained before with the status moves, one thing that status moves can do is inflict these status conditions. Like Toxic is another one. Toxic is learned by nearly every Pokemon in the game. And it applies the Badly Poisoned status condition to your Pokemon, which does increasing damage as time goes on. And Burn, it does a set damage each turn, but it also halves the physical attack of the burned Pokemon. So some moves inflict burn, or some moves inflict status, and you have to choose how valuable that is to use. And a good example of this, which can be seen, is Surf, which is a 90 base power move, and it's water type. And Scald is an 80 base power water type move. The difference, and the reason that in both competitive and in playthroughs, Scald is much better than Surf, is because Scald has a 30% chance to burn, and that's much more valuable than 10 base power. So there are a few major ones and a few minor ones. I don't know why they're like that, but so there's Burn, which, as I said, has physical attack and does set damage. Badly Poisoned, which does increasing damage as time goes on. Regular Poisoned, which does a set damage as time goes on. It's more than the burn damage, and it's more than the initial damage from Toxic. So the Toxic Poisoning, or the Badly Poison, it does 6, then 12, then 18, and just keeps adding 6. Regular Poison, which you can get from moves like Poison, I don't know how to spell Poison. Poison Jab. Come on, why can't I spell? Oh, well, I guess you don't learn it. What's Pokemon that learns? Muck, come here. How do I type? Do you even learn Poison? Poison Jab. Has a chance to poison the target. Sludge Bomb also has a chance to... Oh, here's another example. Sludge Bomb, 30% chance to poison, 90 base power. Sludge Wave, 95 base power, 10% chance to poison. That is why Sludge Bomb is significantly more used than Sludge Wave because of that status condition. Another one is Paralysis, which is on a move like Thunderbolt, or it can be inflicted directly with the move like Thunder Wave. It halves speed, and there's a chance that you can't move on each turn. Freeze, I'm not going to pull up a separate Pokemon. There's a 20%, well, there's an 80% chance that you can't move that turn, but there's a 20% chance that you thaw out and can. There's no real way to inflict it. It's only 10% chances on certain moves, like Ice Beam or Ice Fang. And then finally Sleep, which is just you can't move that turn. A common way to get that is actually self-inflicted with the move Rest that heals you to full health, and that's viable just because of certain strategies around it, which I won't explain. And then there's also minor ones. What's a good example of this? Didn't mean to change my volume. Venusaur, like Leech Seed. This, it takes their health, gives it to you, kind of thing. That's a minor one. If you switch out, I guess I didn't explain this. In a battle, you're battling, and you can either use a move or switch out. If you switch out, all the major ones that I listed before will stay in most circumstances. But minor ones like Leech Seed will not stay. Anyhow, onto abilities, which are these things. So they, again, like moves, they can all be explained in a sentence, but there's so many of them that you have to know, which makes it difficult. So, an example of this, at 1/3 or less HP, grass type moves are stronger. Another example would be like, a common one is Intimidate, which lowers the opponent's attack on switching. Like, there's a lot of things like this that just make Pokemon kind of better, really better, or actively bad. Like, an example of that would be, well, an example of an actively bad one would actually, I like this example better. Every other turn, you can't do anything. I don't even think you can switch out. So you can see, obviously, that that'd be very bad. But if you have a Pokemon like Medicham, its ability Pure Power, it literally just doubles your attack, which obviously makes this Pokemon much better. Those are all boosting moves. Another, well, like Intimidate, you can also lower your Pokemon's attacks. You can have more defensive ones, like Magic Bounce, that just, I don't know why it's not showing it, but if a status move is used on you, then it's as if you used it on them instead. It's just things like that that make the difference. And the way this can be applied to the game is random chance, because some Pokemon can have multiple abilities. Well, some Pokemon have 3 abilities, like this, but you can't always get your hidden ability. But when it's just 2, there's just a 50-50 of what you get. And on a Pokemon like Azumarill, it can make or break the Pokemon. Like this ability, it just gives a resistance to 2 different types, but Azumarill already resists them, so it doesn't matter that much. But the other ability is like the one I just showed, it doubles your attack. So obviously, the ability you get can change how you play. So, items, I should say, most of the time, you can't change your ability. In later games, there are ability capsules, are these things, where you can change your ability, but they're expensive, and also only in like the past 3 games, so it's not always reliable to get them, and also they're in the late game, so most of the time you just can't change your ability, so you're kind of just stuck with it. So items are a thing that you give to your Pokemon to hold. So this can be something like a berry, or okay, I'm not gonna get into mangoes. That's too confusing. But anyways, like a berry or a vest, just things that they can hold that can improve something about them. And as you go through your playthrough, and you can also take them away, depending on just what you want to be holding. And as you go through your playthrough, you gain more and more, so you get more variety with how you can make your Pokemon do stuff. So, and also most of them greatly improve your Pokemon. Like, especially if you're planning ahead, an item can absolutely make or break whether you win a battle. So, 3 notable ones that I'm gonna bring up are, one, berries, which the most common one I think is citrus berry, which is just at half health, or if you get half health or below, you gain some health. That's very useful. There's also multiple applications for this with different types of berries. I would say one of, if not the most busted items, is leftovers, which at the end of your turn, you just gain a little bit of health. This is super useful on stalling type Pokemon. Like, if we pull up Blissey here, you can see massive HP stat, massive special defense. This is a bulky Pokemon that you use to basically just stall turns and eventually win. As you can imagine, if you healed every turn and didn't have to worry about doing it yourself all the time, then that would obviously greatly improve its performance. Let's see. Another one would be the choice items. So there are 3 of these: Band, Scarf, Specs. They all do basically the same thing. A stat is raised, physical attack, speed, or special attack, at the cost of only being able to use one move until you switch out. Now, that might sound really bad, and it can be in the wrong situation, but most of the times, especially when you plan ahead, this is very useful. That extra damage is so valuable that it's easily worth giving up your move slot. And they actually, this is a good time to say, these can complement abilities really well. So if we pull up Darmanitan, no, wrong. Well, actually, I can still do this. So Life Orb, it is an item that you do more damage, but you take a little damage every turn. And then it also has this ability, Sheer Force, which is your special effects, like Thunderbolt Paralysis. They don't happen, but you do more damage. If you have both of these things, then you do not get the Life Orb recoil damage, which is just very good for complementing abilities. Another example would be Darmanitan, also, which has an ability which is basically just the Choice Band as an ability, but you can imagine you can also use another thing like the Choice Scarf, and its effect won't matter. So you can have a 1.5 boost to your speed and attack if you have both. And then the final item I will say, because it's pretty good, is the Focus Sash. If you are at full health and you're hit by a move that would normally kill you, you are left at 1 health. Now this can be very useful if there's a threat to you that you have no other way around. Like, you can one-shot it, but it is faster than you and one-shots you. Focus Sash can absolutely save your life in a run. So strategy-wise, I'm going to go more over strategy in the next video about actually Nuzlocking. But basically, you have to build your team around supporting each other. So, for example, you wouldn't want to have a bunch of fire types on your team, because then you don't have good type coverage. I mean, I've chosen bad Pokemon for this example. But like if you only had 3 Pokemon for some reason, but all of these are only special attackers, so like you don't have any physical moves. So like I said before, with that Blissey, with its massive HP and special defense, these wouldn't do well. And also, with the exception of Reshiram, even this one, none of these are particularly bulky. So if you're in a situation where there's a wall in front of you, it's going to be much harder to keep your Pokemon alive. So it's just some things to worry about when you're building your team. And obviously, in most cases, you can change your team around however you want. So changing that for each battle, especially if you have outside resources to tell you what's coming, will be very useful for you to stay ahead. So yeah, that's the guide on how to battle. Like I said, next video I'm gonna go over specifically Nuzlocking within the game. But yeah, that's gonna be it for today. Hope you enjoyed, and goodbye.